Does it feel like you're experiencing life in 4K Ultra HD while everyone else is watching a blurry, standard definition broadcast? You're the one who instantly notices the subtle shift in a room's atmosphere, hears the unspoken tension behind a strained smile, and sees the true intention veiled by polite conversation. But this clarity doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a burden, a constant, low-grade hum of information that leaves you exhausted, isolated, and perhaps even cynical. Here is the truth you have likely never been told. You are not broken. You are not imagining things. And you are not cursed. This experience is a legitimate cognitive trait, a form of high perceptual acuity, rooted in how your brain deeply processes sensory and emotional data. Giving it a name is the first step toward mastery. It transforms an unnamed burden into a defined characteristic, something you can understand and ultimately control. The core source of your exhaustion isn't what you see, but the fact that you were handed a supercomputer without a user manual. You've been trying to run complex multi-threaded analysis on a system you were told was a simple calculator, leading to constant mental overheating and system crashes. This journey provides that missing manual. If this description resonates with the core of your being, your tribe is here. Go to the comments and write the words, "I see it." It's more than a comment. It's a signal to everyone else tuned into this frequency, a way of finding each other in the noise. The fundamental conflict you live with is a paradox, a cruel equation where the more you see, the worse you feel. The greater the clarity of your perception, the lower the quality of your emotional life. This isn't a theory. It is the lived, daily reality that has been draining you for years. It is the perceiver's paradox, and understanding its mechanics is the key to dismantling it. The primary source of this internal friction is a state of chronic cognitive dissonance. Consider the most common, seemingly innocent social interaction. Your friend, whose face is a mask of tension and whose shoulders are drawn tight, tells you, "I'm fine." In that moment, your mind is forced to hold two opposing realities at once. There is fact A, the verbal data. "I'm fine." Then there is truth B, the torrent of sensory and emotional data screaming the opposite. You perceive the micro-expressions of distress, the strained vocal tone, the palpable aura of anxiety. Your mind is caught in the chasm between these two worlds. The immense psychic energy you expend is not from the conversation itself, but from the constant, exhausting effort of trying to reconcile the spoken world with the felt world. This is why social interactions leave you depleted. You aren't just having one conversation. You are simultaneously processing at least 5 distinct channels of information: the verbal content, the tonal frequency, the raw emotional broadcast, the somatic cues in body language, and the underlying intention. But what if this mental fatigue is not the cost of a flaw, but the price of an unused power? What if the system isn't broken, but merely misunderstood? Let's reframe this entire experience. Your perception is not a curse. It is an evolutionary advantage, a highly advanced internal GPS. Most people navigate life with a standard GPS. It shows them the basic route from point A to point B. Your system, however, is military grade. It doesn't just show the route. It displays real-time traffic patterns, atmospheric pressure changes, potential road hazards, and the structural integrity of bridges. The problem has never been the quality or volume of the data. The problem is that you have been staring at the raw code on a programmer's terminal instead of a clean user interface. You have been letting every single notification, every system alert, interrupt your driving and demand your immediate attention. This is the interface that separates conscious navigation from chaotic overwhelm. It is the missing knowledge that standard psychology often overlooks, focusing on the disorder rather than the operating system. This understanding brings you to a critical crossroads. This is not merely a choice. It is a declaration of intent to your own mind. You can continue down the path you've been on, remaining the passive territory flooded by the data of others. Or you can make the conscious decision right now to become the sovereign architect of your own perception. The decision you make in this moment will define the nature of your reality from this point forward. If you choose the latter, the path of mastery, then the rest of this journey is designed specifically for you. The first pillar of this architecture is the most fundamental, the mental firewall. This is not about building a fortress. It's about installing a sophisticated, intelligent filtration system. But before we build it, we must confront a difficult truth. Your attention is not just a resource. It is a non-renewable form of life energy. Every moment you spend analyzing the fleeting anxiety of a stranger, or the tension between the couple at the next table, is a moment permanently stolen from your life's mission, from your loved ones, from your own peace. You have been hemorrhaging this vital energy for years, becoming a public utility that processes the entire city's emotional data for free. The firewall is the act of stopping this drain. It is the shift from being a passive receiver to a sovereign gatekeeper. Faced with this information overload, the common instinct is to try to process everything faster, more efficiently. But what if this entire premise is wrong? What if the solution isn't about enhancing your processing power, but about mastering the power to refuse the task altogether? This leads to the first skill of the firewall, a discipline secretly practiced by the most effective leaders, creators, and thinkers. It is the art of conscious ignorance. Their true advantage lies not in what they choose to focus on, but in the vast territories of information they systematically choose to ignore. You must grant yourself the right to not know, the right to not analyze. This is not suppression. It is the highest form of strategic prioritization. When you perceive the forced enthusiasm of a cashier, you register its presence, and you let it float by, unexamined. You are the CEO of your own consciousness, and the emotional static of a stranger is not critical to your mission. It is noise. By choosing conscious ignorance, you are not becoming less aware. You are preserving your high-resolution focus for the signals that truly matter. But what about the data you cannot or should not ignore? The charged atmosphere, in a critical work meeting, the unspoken distress of a loved one. You must perceive this data, but you are not required to absorb its emotional charge. This is where we install the second component, emotional shielding. This is not a vague wish, but a focused cognitive practice. Imagine a transparent, intelligent shield of energy enveloping you. It's not a wall of stone, but a dynamic filter. Now, feel its presence. When you walk into a tense room, visualize this shield becoming firmer. Picture the emotional frequencies, the anxiety, the anger, as rain. Your shield allows you to see the scene with perfect clarity, but the rain itself simply beads up and slides away, never touching you. Information passes through. Emotional contagion does not. You can observe the storm with the detached clarity of a meteorologist, noting the wind's speed and pressure. But you remain dry and grounded in your own center. You observe the data. The frequency here is one of high anxiety, but you do not become anxious. This distinction between observation and absorption is the core of your energetic freedom. A critical warning is necessary. The firewall is a precision tool, not a sledgehammer. Its purpose is not to create a cold, detached observer, walled off from genuine connection. Over-application leads to isolation. The goal is to filter out the overwhelming static of the world so that you have the clarity and energy to tune into the subtle music that truly matters. The quiet validation a friend is seeking, the unspoken potential in a creative partner. The firewall protects you from the noise so you can fully engage with the symphony. Mastery begins not with a grand effort, but with a simple experiment. For the next 24 hours, I invite you not just to follow an instruction, but to verify this for yourself. Your experiment is this. The next time you perceive a small, insignificant social signal, a flicker of impatience, an overheard conversation, consciously release it without analysis. Your task is not merely to ignore, but to observe. Observe what happens to your internal state, to your energy levels, when you reclaim that single moment of processing power. You have conducted the experiment. You have felt the initial liberation of allowing insignificant data to pass by, unexamined. But now we arrive at a far more dangerous frontier. The data that makes it through your firewall. The information you deem significant, enough to warrant your attention. This is where the most brilliant perceivers make their most catastrophic error. An error so fundamental, it poisons every subsequent interaction and decision. The trap is the illusion of objectivity. You believe that what you perceive is the truth. The subtle tightening of your colleague's jaw during a negotiation, the fractional hesitation in a loved one's voice, the forced quality of a smile across a room. You register this data with such high fidelity that you mistake the signal for the meaning. You don't just see the data, you believe you see the truth behind it. This is the single greatest fallacy you must unlearn. So if this powerful perception isn't giving you the truth, what is its actual function? What is the raw material it provides before your insecurities corrupt it? The answer is this. Your perception is not a truth detector. It is a world-class hypothesis generator. Its function is to take in raw sensory and emotional data and produce a stream of potential realities, possibilities, and explanations. When your boss glances at their watch while you are presenting your most passionate idea, your mind instantly generates a hypothesis. They are bored and unimpressed. Because your perception is so sharp, this hypothesis arrives with the force and clarity of a divine revelation. It feels like the truth. And in that moment, you have fallen into the trap. You have locked onto one hypothesis, usually the most negative, self-critical one, and accepted it as fact. The reality is that other hypotheses exist. They are late for a critical appointment. They are expecting an urgent message about a family member. They are tracking the time to ensure you have enough of it to finish. Your brain, conditioned by years of misinterpreting this gift, simply discards these alternatives and latches onto the one that confirms your deepest insecurities. The error is not in generating the hypothesis. The error is in ceasing the process of generation. It is the premature collapse of possibility into a single, grim certainty. To escape this trap, you must insert a conscious, deliberate pause between the perception and the conclusion, a moment of cognitive refusal. In that pause, you must learn to label what you have. You do not have the truth. You have a hypothesis, a single, unverified data point. By simply labeling it as such, my mind is generating the hypothesis that my boss is bored. You fundamentally change your relationship to it. You create space. You reclaim your power from the jaws of your own automatic reaction. Once you truly accept that you hold nothing more than a hypothesis, the only logical and intelligent next step is to seek verification. And the primary tool for verification in the social world is not assertion, but inquiry. This leads to a profound shift in the very purpose of your ability. What if the most valuable thing your perception gives you is not an answer, but a better question? This is the narrative shift that turns this entire faculty from a source of judgment into a tool of investigation. Consider the classic scenario. You arrive home, and your partner is unusually quiet. The air is thick. Your old model, the one that has caused you so much pain, operates like this. Your perception scans the data, the silence, the posture, the lack of eye contact, and delivers a verdict. They are angry with me. This verdict then dictates your behavior. You become defensive, withdrawn, or accusatory, thereby creating the very conflict you initially feared. The new model operates on a completely different principle. Your perception scans the same data, but instead of producing a verdict, it prompts a mission. Your internal monologue is not, "They are angry." It is, "I am sensing a significant shift in the emotional baseline." The most effective way to gather more information is through gentle, open inquiry. Your perception's job is to alert you that a question is needed. This transforms your output. Instead of acting on the assumption of anger, you act on the need for clarity. You move from a position of judgment to one of empathy. You say, "I'm sensing things feel a little different tonight. Is everything okay?" Notice the power of this shift. You are not challenging them. You are not accusing them. You are offering them a safe invitation to share their reality. You are using your perception to open a door, not to build a wall. 9 times out of 10, you will discover the silence had nothing to do with you. It was stress from work, a difficult commute, or simple exhaustion. By refusing to accept your initial hypothesis as truth, you avoided a needless conflict and instead created an opportunity for connection. This practice is the essential antidote to the seductive belief that you are an infallible oracle, the very trap that turns this gift into a curse. True mastery begins with the humility of accepting that your high-definition perception provides you with a high-definition hypothesis, nothing more. It does not give you the destination. Your perception is not the final verdict. It is the delivery of the case file. Your real work, the investigation, is about to begin. You have accepted the case file. Your perception has delivered its hypothesis, and you have resisted the urge to declare it a verdict. But now, you face the investigator's most dangerous adversary, your own mind. Left untrained, this brilliant detective will fixate on the most threatening possibility and twist every piece of evidence to confirm it. This is the natural descent from perception to paranoia, an ancient survival program running haywire in the modern world. So here is the fundamental problem. How do you interrupt this automatic, self-destructive process? How do you build a bridge from raw data to genuine wisdom? This is not about the hollow advice to be more positive. This requires a rigorous, counterintuitive system. It requires an act of supreme cognitive discipline. Before you permit yourself to accept a negative conclusion about another person's behavior, you must first force your mind to generate 3 alternative, plausible, and more benevolent explanations. This isn't a friendly suggestion. It is a cognitive algorithm. This discipline is precisely what separates elite negotiators and master therapists from the rest of the world. Not because they possess a secret, but because they have trained themselves to fight the powerful current of their own negative assumptions. Let's run the diagnostic. You send a thoughtful, detailed email to a colleague. Hours later, the reply arrives. A single word, noted. The untrained mind immediately convicts. The verdict is swift and brutal. They're dismissing my work. They think I'm an idiot. They didn't even read it. The rest of your day is poisoned by this single, unverified conclusion. Now, engage the algorithm. The same email arrives. You feel the same initial sting, but you pause. You refuse to accept the first story your mind tells you. You engage the rule of three. 1. They are overwhelmed, moving between meetings, and that terse reply is the most they can offer from their phone. A signal of their chaotic schedule, not their opinion of you. 2. They are dealing with a significant personal crisis you know nothing about. Their focus and energy completely depleted. 3. They agree with you so completely that they see no need for discussion. Noted is their version of execution approved. You have not proven any of these are true. That is not the point. The point is, you have broken the mind's monopoly on paranoia. You have forced the introduction of possibility into a system that craves grim certainty. This act of intellectual force creates emotional space. It cools the hot reaction and allows for a measured response. But even with this tool, you may still feel a sense of unease. You've created possibilities, but you are still navigating a fog. What happens when you are perceiving a genuinely negative emotion? You can feel the anger or frustration rolling off someone in waves. It is real, palpable. Does that mean your original negative hypothesis was correct after all? This is where most people stop, believing they've reached the end of the analysis. But they are missing a far deeper, more fundamental classification system. To achieve a quantum leap in perceptual maturity, you must learn to dissect the very data you receive. You must separate two streams of information that are almost always fused together: emotional data and intentional data. Emotional data is the raw feeling you perceive, the anger, the sadness, the anxiety. It's the vibration in the air. Your perception is a world-class receiver for this data. Intentional data is the target of that emotion. And the single greatest error you can make is to assume that because you can feel the emotion, you are automatically the target. You are mistaking the broadcast for the destination. A person's inner world is a constant weather system of emotions, generated by their commute, their finances, a memory, or a conversation from an hour ago. They carry this storm with them. You, the sensitive barometer, register the change in atmospheric pressure instantly. But the storm is not necessarily for you. Think of it this way. You hear a car alarm blaring down the street. The sound is real, loud, and agitating. That is the emotional data. But you do not assume the car is angry at you. You don't take it personally. You recognize it as a dumb system reacting to a stimulus. You must learn to grant people this same mechanical grace. Their emotional alarms are constantly being triggered by things that have nothing to do with you. In fact, many people are strangers to their own inner worlds. They walk through life, broadcasting emotional storms they cannot even name, and projecting a chaos they don't fully understand. You, the sensitive instrument, pick up their signal with perfect clarity. By uncoupling their broadcast from any intent towards you, you are often achieving a more accurate diagnosis of the situation than they are capable of themselves. This is the ultimate calibration. The goal is not to invent comforting fictions or see pleasant faces in every storm cloud. It is about fierce intellectual honesty. If you consistently perceive targeted negativity, and your alternative interpretations are consistently proven wrong, you must accept that data. The objective is not to ignore reality, but to prevent your own insecurities from painting the portrait. It is to broaden the field of possibilities before you commit to a single, narrow, and often painful version of the truth. Let's make this real. The next time you feel that negative social signal, the averted gaze, the sharp tone, the sudden silence, pause. Before the old, familiar script of self-criticism begins its loop, Perform one act of cognitive defiance. Generate just one alternative, benevolent interpretation. You do not have to believe it. You only have to allow it to exist as a possibility. This is the first rep. This is how you begin to dismantle the architecture of anxiety and build piece by piece an unshakable foundation of wisdom. You have learned to build the firewall and interpret the data that slips through. You have resisted the urge to convict on flimsy evidence and have learned to separate another person's emotional weather from a targeted storm. You now possess a clearer, more nuanced understanding of the social world than ever before. And with this power comes the single most seductive temptation, the urge to use it, the desire to intervene, to correct, to reveal. You see the truth, so you feel a profound responsibility to speak it. This is the precipice of a catastrophic error. You stand at the edge of the social minefield, holding what you believe is a map, when in fact you are holding a scalpel. Have you ever been in a conversation and felt a chasm open up between what someone is saying and what they are feeling? You see the tension in their jaw while they claim to be relaxed. You hear the tremor of anxiety in their voice as they insist everything is under control. And in that moment, a powerful impulse arises. The impulse to perform surgery, to close the gap, to cut away the pretense, to say, "I see you're not okay. Let's expose what's really going on." You offer this incision as a gift, an act of empathy, and you are met with a flash of anger, a cold withdrawal, or a flat denial that leaves you stunned. You were trying to heal, and yet you were punished for it. Here is the brutal lesson that every highly perceptive person must learn. Your insight, when delivered without consent, is not a gift of truth, but an act of violation. You are not a compassionate friend. You are a surgeon operating on a conscious patient who never agreed to the procedure. The pain of this unsolicited surgery will always overwhelm any potential for healing. Your truth becomes a weapon that carves new wounds instead of closing old ones. Let us give this destructive habit a name: unsolicited perceptual analysis, or UPA. This is the act of verbalizing your perception of another person's internal state without their explicit request. It is the single most common way perceptive people sabotage their relationships, because UPA is a direct assault on two of the most fundamental human needs: psychological safety and personal autonomy. You have made the other person feel both unsafe and controlled, triggering a primal defensive reaction. People build a public self. It is their armor, their carefully constructed interface with the world. When you commit UPA, you are not just saying, "I see you're anxious." You are implicitly saying, "I see through your armor. The person you present to the world is a facade, and I have the power to dismantle it." This fundamentally challenges their self-concept, forcing them into a state of cognitive dissonance, a term coined by psychologist Leon Festinger to describe the intense mental stress of holding two contradictory beliefs. They believe they are in control, yet you claim they are not. To resolve this stress, the easiest path is not to agree with you, but to discredit you, to see you not as a helper, but as an aggressor. This is why your most accurate observations can lead to the most intense conflicts. You believe you are operating on the level of content, the words being said, but the other person is reacting to the meta-content, the unspoken power dynamic you have just created. You think you're discussing anxiety, but they are fighting for their psychological survival against your perceived judgment. The social world operates on a delicate, unspoken contract of mutual respect for one another's chosen narratives. It's a collective agreement to grant each other what the great psychologist Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard, or at least a functional version of it. We tacitly agree not to expose every minor insecurity for the sake of social harmony. UPA is the act of willfully violating that contract. It is trading a lifetime of potential trust for a single, fleeting moment of feeling right. Consider the common scenario. A friend is passionate about a new, ill-conceived business venture. Your perception screams that it is based on flawed assumptions. The UPA response is to sit them down and surgically dissect their dream with the scalpel of your insight. The result? You have not saved them from failure. You have made yourself the enemy of their dream. You have attacked their identity. A masterful perceiver understands that the data they collect is for navigation, not narration. They see the same flaws. But instead of performing an unsolicited autopsy on the idea, they honor the other person's autonomy. They might ask, "That's a fascinating market. What's the biggest challenge you're preparing for?" They use their insight to foster the other person's own self-awareness, not to impose their own. Their ultimate goal is not to prove they are right, but to empower the other person to find their own truth. This is the critical shift. Your perception is not a license to operate on others. It is a private guidance system. Its primary function is to inform your own actions, your own words, your own decisions, not to publicly audit the inner lives of those around you. It requires a level of restraint that feels almost superhuman. The next time you feel the powerful urge to commit UPA, to cut, to expose, to reveal, perform this one. Simple countermeasure. Turn the scalpel inward. Ask yourself not, "How can I make them see this?" but, "Given what I perceive, what is the wisest and most respectful way for me to act right now?" Sometimes the answer is a gentle question. Sometimes it is to offer validation for a hidden effort. And very often, the most powerful and strategic action is to put the scalpel down. By withholding your uninvited surgery, you preserve the psychological safety required for a genuine connection to ever be possible. You have put the scalpel down. You have learned the profound restraint required to keep from performing surgery on the unconsenting. And yet, a void opens. If your perception is not a tool for intervention, what is it for? For too long, you have been trying to use a compass as a megaphone. You have been shouting the coordinates into the world when you were meant to be silently reading your own map. This is the third and final pillar of our architecture: strategic action. It is the conversion of your perception from a public liability into a private superpower. The primary function of your insight is not to announce the state of the world to others, but to guide your own navigation through it. The megaphone is loud, disruptive, and focused on changing the other person. The compass is silent, internal, and focused on refining your own path. It is the quiet intelligence that tells you which professional partnerships are built on a solid foundation and which are hollow. It is the subtle feeling that guides you away from a social gathering that will drain your energy and toward a conversation that will replenish it. Your perception is your strategic edge. The samurai Miyamoto Musashi wrote, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." He was not speaking of seeing ghosts, but of sensing the underlying dynamics of a confrontation. The opponent's intent, their hesitation, their hidden weaknesses. This perception was not for commentary. It was for decisive action. The most powerful move you can make, guided by this compass, is often strategic silence. When you perceive envy in a colleague's compliment, the megaphone announces the hypocrisy. The compass guides you to accept the compliment gracefully while making a mental note to secure your own work and manage that relationship with careful boundaries. When you sense a friend's new passion is built on a fantasy, the megaphone shatters their happiness with your truth. The compass guides you to be a supportive presence ready to help if the fantasy collapses, preserving the trust that your unsolicited truth would have destroyed. This internal guidance system is the foundation. But does this mean your insight can never be used to directly impact another person for the better? No. Once you have mastered the compass, you can learn to pick up the scalpel again. This time, however, you will not use it for the unsolicited surgery of exposing a flaw. You will use it for the highest and most refined form of empathetic connection, confirming the unsaid. This is the advanced application. Instead of exposing a vulnerability, you use your perception to validate a hidden strength or a silent effort. Consider a coworker who is visibly nervous before a major presentation. The clumsy approach, the act of UPA, is to say, "I could see you were nervous, but you did fine." An observation that only magnifies their insecurity. The masterful perceiver sees the same nervousness, but they also see the hidden hours of preparation. After the presentation, they say, "The depth of your research in the third section was incredible. It's clear how much work you put into that." This is a profound application of the principle of reciprocity. You have given them the rare, invaluable gift of seeing their hidden effort. And in return, you forge a bond of trust that simple praise could never achieve. This technique transforms you from an analyst into an ally. Imagine a friend struggling with a new skill, feeling like an imposter. The scalpel of UPA would be to say, "I can tell you're feeling insecure about this." This is an attack. The precision of confirming the unsaid is to find a specific, true piece of their effort and validate it. The way you handled that specific problem showed a level of creative thinking I haven't seen before. You are not lying. You are using your high-definition perception to find the signal of strength in the noise of their self-doubt and amplify it. You are using your insight to help them build a more accurate and empowered story about themselves. This is the art of strategic action. 99% of the time, your perception is a compass for your own navigation. In that rare 1% of moments, it becomes a scalpel to heal, connect, and empower. But this power, like all power, carries the seed of its own corruption. The line between wise influence and dark manipulation is drawn by a single, sharp distinction: intent. The moment you use your insight into another's vulnerability, not to heal, but to exploit, you have begun to poison yourself. You can use your perception to see someone's need for approval and use it to control them. You can sense their desperation and use it to secure an unfair advantage. These actions may offer short-term gains, but each manipulative act is another bar in the window of your own prison. You will win the argument only to find yourself in a world of transactional, inauthentic relationships you yourself have engineered. The ultimate corruption of this gift is not that it hurts others, it is that it guarantees your own isolation, turning your unique perception into a self-inflicted curse. You have stood at the edge of the abyss, looked into the corrupting power of your own insight, and chosen to step back. You have learned that using your perception to manipulate, even with the best intentions, builds a prison around you. But there is a final, more subtle form of this corruption. It is a poison that tastes like wisdom, a trap that feels like enlightenment. It is the belief that because you see more, you know best. This is the oracle complex, and it is the last gatekeeper standing between you and true mastery. The oracle does not seek to control others for personal gain. Their corruption is more refined. They believe their perception is an objective, infallible report of reality. They are the ones in a meeting who don't just have an opinion, but deliver a verdict. They are the friend who doesn't offer advice but issues a prophecy. They sit on a self-made throne, dispensing truths that isolate them from the very humanity they are so adept at observing. The oracle forgets a fundamental law of existence. To be human is to be wrong. The moment you believe your perception is immune to this law, you have stopped perceiving and started projecting. You are no longer reading the world. You are reading your own ego. To dismantle this complex, we don't need a new, revolutionary idea. We need to install a mental operating system that is over 2,000 years old, yet remains the most powerful defense against intellectual arrogance. It was first articulated by Socrates, who, when told he was the wisest man alive, discovered his only advantage was a profound awareness of his own ignorance. He saw that others thought they knew things they did not. He, on the other hand, was wise only because he did not think he knew what he did not know. This is not false modesty. It is the most powerful intellectual position one can occupy. This is the antidote, a radical humility. This humility is not a weakness or a form of self-deprecation. It is the ultimate strength. It is the operating system that keeps your perception open to new data. Certainty is a closed loop. It is a brittle, glass statue that shatters the moment a contradictory fact appears. Humility, however, is a living organism. It actively seeks out disconfirming evidence, not as a threat, but as an opportunity to refine its understanding. It allows you to learn faster because you are not wasting energy defending old ideas. It creates an environment where it is safe for you and for others to be wrong, fostering deeper and more authentic connections. The oracle is trapped in a fortress of their own rightness. The humble perceiver is free in a world of infinite learning. They understand that even if they can see 10 layers of reality, there are 1,000 more they cannot. But how do you cultivate this? First, you must identify its enemy. Think back to the last time you called it. The last time you knew exactly what someone was going to do, and you were right. Consider that sudden rush of satisfaction, that warm glow of certainty. Where does that feeling truly come from? That sensation is not the feeling of truth. It is the feeling of your ego feasting on your gift. That feeling is the most addictive byproduct of your ability. And like any addiction, it ultimately clouds your judgment. The true reward of high-definition perception is not the smug satisfaction of being correct. The true reward is the superior outcome that your perception allows, the preserved relationship, the averted crisis, the wiser investment, the deeper human connection. Therefore, the next time you feel that intoxicating rush of certainty, let it become your mental alarm bell. Let it be the signal to pause. In that moment, you must deliberately introduce doubt, asking yourself, what if I am wrong? You must genuinely wonder, what critical piece of information might I be missing? And most importantly, you must search for a more generous interpretation of the facts. Passing through this final gate means fundamentally redefining your relationship with your own mind. It means trading the fleeting pleasure of being right for the enduring power of being effective. This humility is not the abdication of your power. It is the final and most necessary condition for wielding it wisely. You've felt it, haven't you? That specific, quiet frustration of sitting in a room, watching a decision unfold, knowing with absolute clarity that it's the wrong one. You saw the subtle tells everyone else missed. The flash of fear in the CEO's eyes when a certain risk was mentioned. The forced enthusiasm in the team lead's voice. The unspoken alliance between two colleagues revealed by a shared, fleeting glance. You saw the whole chessboard, but you were just a pawn, forced to watch the game play out towards a predictable, avoidable failure. What then is the point of seeing so much if you can change so little? Is the ultimate goal of all this work merely to find peace with your own powerlessness? The answer is an emphatic no. The internal architecture we have constructed, the firewall, the interpreter, the humble mind, was never meant to be a sanctuary for retreat. It was a training ground. It was the forging of a tool. Now, we move from internal defense to external application. Because once your perception is disciplined by humility, it ceases to be a source of anxiety and becomes the most potent, effective instrument you possess. It grants you what can only be described as an asymmetric advantage. Asymmetry implies an imbalance. In any human interaction, from a boardroom negotiation to an intimate conversation, there is the stated reality and the actual reality. Most people operate only on the stated reality. They hear the words, see the overt actions, and take the surface-level data as truth. You, however, are operating on both levels simultaneously. Where they see a confident smile, you might detect the micro-expression of contempt that flashes for a fraction of a second. Where they hear a firm yes, you hear the almost imperceptible hesitation that betrays deep uncertainty. They are navigating with a printed street map. You are using a live holographic projection of the entire city, complete with traffic flows and structural integrity warnings. Let's be clear. This is not supernatural mind reading. It is superior pattern recognition, honed to a razor's edge. While others process a single channel of information, the explicit dialogue, you are integrating multiple data streams in real time. You are analyzing vocal prosody, the emotional texture of speech. You are tracking body language against the verbal baseline. You are sensing the room's emotional atmosphere as if it were a physical temperature. This is the domain of the most effective leaders, negotiators, and therapists in history. They don't win through force. They win because they perceive the reality that others miss. Their influence stems from this informational asymmetry. In a practical sense, this advantage is your key to unlocking better outcomes. Imagine a high-stakes negotiation. The other party insists their bottom line is a certain number. The old you, the oracle, might have called their bluff, creating a standoff. But the new you, the humble perceiver, notices something else. You see the tension in their jaw every time the delivery schedule is mentioned, not the price. Your perception, guided by inquiry, forms a new hypothesis. Their real pain point isn't money. It's the fear of a delayed launch. Armed with this insight, you can reframe the entire conversation. You offer a solution that guarantees their timeline, perhaps at a slightly different price point. This isn't a concession, it's a masterstroke. You have not just won the negotiation, you have solved their actual problem, building a foundation of trust that is infinitely more valuable than a few percentage points. You used your advantage, not to exploit a weakness, but to create mutual success. As a leader, this faculty is your compass. It allows you to sense the subtle shifts in team morale long before they show up in performance reviews. You can identify the quiet innovator who holds the key to a project but is too intimidated to speak, or notice the brewing conflict between two key players based on the cold formality that has crept into their communications. You are not just managing tasks. You are stewarding the delicate ecosystem of human potential. Your perception allows you to intervene with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, addressing nascent problems and amplifying hidden strengths before anyone else even knows they exist. This is where the humility we cultivated becomes the engine of your effectiveness. The oracle, convinced of their own infallible insight, acts on their first read and shuts down further data intake. Their certainty makes them predictable and ultimately easy to mislead. Your humility, however, forces you to treat every perception as a question. My gut says they are hiding something. Is it malice or is it fear? Is it a threat to me or a vulnerability they are trying to protect? This disciplined curiosity keeps your perceptual channels wide open, constantly refining your understanding. It transforms you from someone who is merely perceptive into someone who is profoundly insightful. The ethical boundary here is crucial, and it is the final test of your mastery. This asymmetric advantage is not a license for manipulation. Its power is not for exploiting the fears you perceive in others, but for understanding them. It is not for winning arguments, but for building bridges over the chasms of misunderstanding. The ultimate purpose of seeing more clearly is not to gain power over others, but to empower everyone, yourself included, to make wiser, more compassionate, and more effective decisions. This is the true return on your lifelong investment. You have borne the burden of your high-definition mind. Now you are finally equipped to wield its incredible power. The goal was never to turn down the resolution of your life. It was never to convince you to accept a blurry, standard-definition existence when you were built for 4K. The entire purpose of our work has been to build you an internal operating system, capable of processing that brilliant, overwhelming world without the system overload. You now possess the complete architecture, the mental firewall to act as your shield, the art of wise interpretation to serve as your lens, and the discipline of strategic action to function as your compass. This is the grand payoff, the ability to live fully in your high-definition reality, not in retreat from it. This brings us to the most profound reframing of all. For years, you may have treated your perception as a chronic condition to be managed, a bug in your code. But what if it was never a bug? What if it was the core feature? That heightened sensitivity is what allows music to move you to tears, art to rearrange your soul, and human connection to feel profound and true. It is the very faculty that grants access to a richer, more textured layer of existence that most people will never know. You are not cursed with seeing too much. You are equipped for a deeper life. But does this mean the static will never return? Does this mean you are now immune to the overload? No. And that is the final, most empowering truth. Mastery is not a final destination of placid calm. The world will still be loud. The true mark of your integration is not the absence of turbulence, but the quiet confidence that you can handle it. When you feel the familiar signs of overload, you no longer spiral. You recognize it, and you know which tool to reach for. You are no longer a passenger, helplessly thrown about by external chaos. You are the pilot, with a hand on the controls, capable of recalibrating in real time. This is true agency. Your journey gives you a unique perspective, and now it becomes a guidepost. Your insight is a light for someone else walking this path behind you. To contribute to this collective map, share in the comments which of the 3 pillars, the mental firewall, wise interpretation, or strategic action, provided you with the most critical leverage. Your answer will help illuminate the way for others.